This is the story of a lost neighborhood and of its people who did not want to go.
I don't want no money. I want my home. The old man is old. See how the old man is old? No more. That's enough. I don't want to get out. I said to my two daughters, they don't want to get out too because they spend a lot of money. Plenty of money they spend in this place. We not get none to nobody. Never.
Hi, welcome to the West End Video Newsletter. This week something happened that restored my faith in good versus evil, and we were partners in West End Place with the Planning Office of Urban Affairs, and Michael Groden was the, Monsignor Michael Groden was the executive director, and what happened is that he completely shut us out of the project. Everybody thought this guy was the greatest guy in the world. The Globe has printed a couple articles that he had to resign under pressure. Unfortunately, this guy was the pastor of St. Cecilia's Church, and he was also the executive director of the Planning Office of Urban Affairs, which is sort of bogus anyway, because it was a church-sponsored, well, it wasn't church-sponsored, it was an individual 501c3, but it was, most of it, the Cardinal Law was the president of it, and it was basically run by Catholic Church people. And they sort of did a number on us. We were with some other group, this H&D Development, and the BRA originally awarded West End Place to them. And what they did, someone said, I have no empirical evidence of this, it's sort of all anecdotal, that the Archdiocese, the Cardinal, went in to see Ray Flynn, and Ray Flynn had the BRA bring the request for proposals back in and sent it back out, and when he did, he gave it to the Planning Office of Urban Affairs, and he made them take us with it. And we were with this other group, like I say, there were two Jewish guys, and they were going to give us $500,000 seed money and $200,000 a year to get our project going. We had all kinds of social programs going that would have helped out West Enders. And unfortunately, first chance they had, they sort of ditched us. We have been fighting with them for about 7 or 8 years. The Globe won't print the other side of the story. They did this story about Father Groden and being taken, he had to resign for his, of being the pastor of St. Cecilia's, and he also had to resign from the executive directorship of the Planning Office of Urban Affairs. Now, but in the Globe, nobody puts in the things that he's done. He's done all these horrendous things to all these different neighborhoods. When we first were partners with him, people from the North End who had done business with him in the North End, they wouldn't do business with him anymore. And they said, remember, this man is a developer, not a priest. And he may be, and I hate to bring this up, I really hate to bring this up because I guess he's out of there. But all I could read about him in the papers was that he was such a great guy. Now, he may have been a great priest, but he was a horrendous developer. He ended up with a $3.5 million judgment against him because he did to some developer, I think his name was Levinson, and what he had done to the neighborhoods all these years, he tried to do to this guy, only this guy had the money to fight him and brought him to court. And in court, the judge ruled against him, said he was totally dishonest and so and so and so. And what he had done was, this developer had options, and he talked the developer into giving him the options. And when he took the options, he says, don't worry, I'll bring in the soft cost money for affordable housing and everything, and we'll take care of it. Well, he let the options run out, and then as soon as they ran out, he kept the options, he got the options from the people that originally had them, and he sort of pushed the developer Levinson out. Levinson took him to court, and he was found guilty. And now the problem, he's done these projects. He's done them in the North End. He's done them in Scituate. He's done them in Arlington. He's done them in Brookline. And I have newspaper articles all over the place. He's done these things everywhere. And every neighborhood that he's been in, he has caused problems. He killed the dream of the West End to be instead of being an urban village a la Herb Gans, Lowell Square Associates, who the Archdiocese was one of two people, Archdiocese and Bob Keene. Bob Keene has an apartment in the building. Mark Maloney of the BRA has an apartment in the building. A lot of the employees of these organizations got apartments in the buildings. The only ones that really didn't make out was West Enders, and that was the project was originally supposed to be for West Enders. They wiped out all the social programs. We were going to have social programs for former West Enders to buy their apartments and a whole host of social things. We had people all lined up. As soon as the Archdiocese took over and got the designation and won in court from Rappaport, they said, oh, we can't do any of that. It costs too much. We got our own programs. Of course, they never put any of their programs in there. It was just to kill us. And I think the basic reason that Lowell Square Associates did not want a lot of former West Enders in the building is because if we had too many, we probably could have taken over the co-op board. We probably could have got rid of Maloney, Mark Maloney, who was the head of the BRA. We probably could have gotten rid of his company. We could have renegotiated whatever contracts there were. This way, if there weren't a lot of us, they didn't have to worry about us. They kept saying they were going to give us 60% of the project. What they didn't say was that like 70% of the 60% was in, which sounds a little convoluted, but most of the preference was in the market value units. So we could have gotten, and most of the pressure from West Enders were in affordable or moderate units, and I think we probably got about 30% of the moderate and subsidized units, the low-income units. But they were going to let us buy all the market value units we want, which is crazy, because why do you need a preference to buy market value units? You go in there, you put your money down, and you take them. So we were sort of like really pushed out of that whole thing. Unfortunately, the way it goes, we've been in court with our partners for the last 6 or 7 years. It's finally resolved, so thank God for that. But like I say, Groden has done projects in the North End, Scituate, Arlington, Brookline. In Brookline, just recently there was a problem because St. Adrian's Church, they wanted to build housing, and they wanted to do it in such a way that the people were mad. The hospital in Brighton, which is funny because just before Brian Hoden died, we were talking about that. He was going to, he said that he wasn't pleased with what was happening up in the hospital. People in Arlington weren't crazy about him either. The North End refused to deal with him, would not deal with him anymore. And I guess nobody was listening, because all the beautiful people, Mitchell Spring, Dave Nyan, Dave Nyan said that, you know, he's a beautiful guy, and everybody, all the sharks are around him. And the funny part is that Dave Nyan said that it was the Cardinal Law trying to push him out after he got pushed out, because Grodin signed a petition that said that the Cardinal should leave. Now, this sounds crazy to me because I have pictures here of the Cardinal. Every time they did something, the Cardinal and they were right there with their shovels. And the Cardinal was there at West End Place, the Cardinal's there at Roland Square, the Cardinal's everywhere. The Cardinal and Groden were joined at the hip. Matter of fact, I think the Cardinal has protected him all these years, and what had happened was Groden had jumped ship because he realized the Cardinal was going to be gone sooner or later, and and figured he would save his butt because everybody knew he was part of the Cardinal's organization, and the Cardinal was the president of the Planning Office of Urban Affairs. I have a few letters here, okay? I was so frustrated by what was happening to us. I went to everybody. I went to senators. I went to everybody, and nobody would help us because the Archdiocese is so powerful, or was so powerful, that nobody would want to get involved. I have a couple letters here, and one of them is to the Pope. And I sent this letter to the Pope, okay? His Holiness, it's John Paul II, Most Holy Father, because I know of no other place to turn, I am writing to tell you of a situation in the Boston Archdiocese. The Boston Archdiocese seems to have changed its mission of spreading the word of Jesus to building housing. I have no objection to building housing, but the Archdiocese is making a lot of money from this, to the detriment of its primary goal. Our Cardinal Law does not seem to care what his subordinates do as long as the money comes in. The Archdiocese is acting more like a real estate developer than a church. The Archdiocese has given its parishes orders to turn over all their surplus properties, turn it into the Planning Office of Urban Affairs, their housing arm. They are selling it off or building housing on all surplus church property. Shouldn't the parishes have the final say and decide what to do with the surplus property? After all, they paid for it with their contributions to the local parish. If making money is the goal of the Archdiocese, then why did Jesus throw out the money changers? Is this an ominous sign of their return? If monetary concerns are the Church's primary focus, the whole tenet of Catholicism has changed or is changing. Jim Campano, publisher of the West Ender newsletter. Now, I don't know if that got filed into File 11, it probably did, but I was so frustrated, I just had to vent my spleen, I guess. I also, Reverend William Leary, head of Boston College, he was in the Herald about a year ago in May, and what he said was he was forming a group called the Church in the 21st Century. I will read you that letter. I sent one to him too. Dear Reverend, I address you as Reverend because I think your most important duties are as a priest. All other secular chores should come after your spiritual mission. I read the article about you last Thursday in the Boston Herald and felt I must write. I think the biggest problem with the Archdiocese is the arrogance with which it is being run. Instead of let's all reason together and find a just solution, they think we're just good guys. They think we're the good guys. We can't be wrong. Too many priests think their secular jobs far outweigh their spiritual responsibilities. I am president of the Old West End Housing Corporation. We were partners with the Archdiocese Planning Office of Urban Affairs. That we were treated most shabbily and pushed out of the project would not have bothered me if we were dealing with a for-profit developer. They are known to cheat and lie. But a developer wearing a collar is supposed to represent a little different perspective. The Planning Office of Urban Affairs leaves a bad taste in whatever neighborhood they go. They lie to get the permits and the permission of the neighborhood, and then do opposite of what they promised they would do. I am still a practicing Catholic, but I am a disillusioned one. I once believed you could trust the priesthood, but now no longer think that way. Hoping for a better church, Jim Campano, publisher of the West Ender. Now, I guess the problem was when we first got put with Groden, I asked him, I said, we have a contract with the other people. How come you won't, let's make a contract with you now, spell out what we were supposed to get. He said, oh, I can't do that. It's too early. He had 6 million excuses. He says, but trust me. He says, you'll do as good with us as you did with the other developers that you were originally with. Refused to sign a contract, And when we finally did get the designation and beat Rappaport in court, he said there was no money for us. He said that all the social programs and everything, they could supply them, they didn't need us. They gutted our proposal, which was an excellent proposal, because that's why the BRA gave it to us at that time, and that was Coyle. Coyle was the head man. But I have a letter here, and I intend to read it. I sent an email to the Boston Globe, but they refused to print it. Globe has never put anything that I've written about about Father Groden and the planning office of Veteran Affairs in the paper. They just refused to it. So I sent this email to the ombudsman. To whom it may concern, my name is Jim Campano, president of the Old West End Housing Corporation and publisher of the West Ender newsletter. I wonder why you haven't interviewed any of the people who have done business with Monsignor Groden. It would be nice to see some of the comments on the supposed holy man from the people he has dealt with. He lies to whatever neighborhood he's trying to get permits from, and when he gets them, does whatever he wants. He has left angry residents in a lot of neighborhoods, and if you complain, he calls you a racist. I have an email from Jerry Ackerman when he was still with the Globe and wrote a piece on Groden without telling the other side. I complained, and here are a few of the excerpts from the email Ackerman sent me. Jim, there is no doubt Groden is a lightning rod for problems, and there would not have been room on the page to mention all the battles that have sprung up where Groden walks. I think the Globe is as least as responsible as Groden for the battles that have sprung up, because of his arrogant and elitist attitude. Groden is a charlatan, but the Globe has been protecting him for a long time, in part because of his friend David Nyan and all the other beautiful people, Tommy McNeil, Mitcho Spring, politicians and movers and shakers who are his parishioners. We were partners with him, Groden, in West End Place, and I expected to be dealing with Bing Crosby and going my way. Instead, I got Cardinal Richelieu of the Three Musketeers. Groden built a little fiefdom at the Archdiocese a la Robert Moses in New York. I also said, if you can't find room for the whole story, at least be a little objective, label it an ad. Jim Campano, the West Ender News. Now, a lot of these things happened, and he has always, if you complain about whatever he was doing to you, he called you a racist. We've been called racist by, he went into the BRA, he told them that we didn't want black people in there. So what happened is, I went up and talked to the people of Fair Housing, and I said, if you're black and you're from the West End, give them absolute preference. They said, we can't do that. That's racist. So I have no idea what's going on, but I know he called the people in Scituate racists, he called the people in the North End racists, and this is what he wrote. They did a story on me in the Wall Street Journal, and here's what he said in the Wall Street Journal. They were trying to say, us meaning us, that the fair housing rules shouldn't apply, says Monsignor Michael Groden, who heads the Archdiocese Housing Office. He was a target of the suit and has taken some lumps in Mr. Campano's columns. If they had their druthers, said Monsignor Groden, the place would have been for white West Enders. From his living room recliner, Mr. Campano says, the easiest way to make us look bad is to call us racist. That's what I'm saying. Up in Dorchester, he went in and he told them that he was going to put in a hospice for women of color. And instead of having a hospice for women of color, it turned out to be an infirmary for prisoners. And the people were highly incensed about this because they did not expect to happen what happened. They expected him to keep his word and do what he was supposed to do. Okay, this is the one in Dorchester. If it's billed as an AIDS house, how could you in good conscience say no to it? These are the people that live there. It's when all those details trickled out that the red flags are raised. Okay, some more quotes. The deception is so insulting. I'm bothered by be treating like I don't matter. Okay. To residents, the drive to open the AIDS house began awkwardly in January, furtively rather than up front. Neighbors said they found out about plans for the house when they spotted McManus walking the grounds. She's with the officer in planning, walking the grounds of Albin Street. After requesting a face-to-face meeting with the house proponents, neighborhood leaders faxed Groden a list of questions that sought basic information about the AIDS house, from the criteria used in selecting occupants to the names of those on the Women's Council Board of Directors. At that community meeting, Groden told residents he had not brought answers to their questions because a plan for the day-to-day functions of the facility was still in the works, according to minutes of the session taken by members of the Neighborhood Association. 6 months earlier, McManus wrote a letter to Groden describing her delight in finding a location for a proposed AIDS shelter. She says, "We have found that house." He never tells the truth with any of the people that he deals with. He didn't do it with us. He didn't do it with anybody. I know we spent time out in front of West End Place picketing when they decided to push us out of the building. They could have. This was supposed to be the dream of West Enders, to have a little bit of the West End. Even Flint says, "Look, Flint told us, we can't give you back the West End. We tore it down. We're sorry, but this will be a little bit. It'll be a little payback. You know, at least it's something that we're saying we're sorry." Well, Groden destroyed that. He took it and totally pushed it all out. There was a editorial in the Boston Globe that says that we shouldn't waste Groden's expertise. He's such a great man. He may have done a few minor things wrong, like winding up $25,000 worth of expenses on the planning, personal expenses on the Planning Office of Urban Affairs credit cards. You know, he lives a pretty high style. Up until he got the West End project, he was in this little office down in back of City Hall. As soon as he got the West End project, he moved up to Devonshire Street in this big suite of offices. I mean, with conference tables, and man, it was, instead of this little organization that he had that looked more like what a housing group should have, okay, without, you know, wasting extravagant money on we'll say, highly polished conference tables and stuff. It was amazing. We picketed him. We picketed him outside of his office. We were there in a lot of places. And I guess I am not entirely liked by him because I have, to be truthfully honest, over the years, I'm from the West End, and I was always taught if someone beats up on you, you beat back at them. You don't run and hide. And when they called me up after he got, when they levied that fine of 2.5 or 3.5 million on him, they called me up, and I guess I called him. They said, "What do you think about him?" And I said, "I think he's a wolf in priest's clothing." And I guess that really got him crazy. I mean, that probably would have got me crazy too. But all I'm trying to say is that if they try to bring this guy back, please don't. Just because all these, you know, the problem with all Tip O'Neill's kid, Tommy, and Mitchell Spring, and Dave Nyan, they're parishioners. You may be a great priest. Okay, but if you have to deal with him on a neighborhood basis, on anything that counts for your neighborhood, he took it and ripped it apart. He was not a good developer. He may be a good priest. He is not a good developer. Right after they did the West End Place, okay, the Archdiocese went over to East Boston, and they decided that they were going to put up a project in East Boston. And the city, they went into the people, and the people, basically what they did was they told the people in East Boston that the people in the West End loved their project and they were happy. Well, somebody from one of the East Boston papers called me up, and she said that, "You guys are happy with that? Are you happy? Is it working out the way you thought it was going to work out?" I said, "Oh no, we got." They took advantage of us, and we're out in the cold, and blah 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 blah. And she says, "Well, they're putting a project up in here. Could you come down and talk to me for a while?" So I went down and I talked to her, and we had a long conversation. And I told them what had happened in the West End Place, and they started in the paper. If you really want to know what happened, and with Groden, Father Groden's place. Go down to the West End and ask the people of the West End. And they turned the archdiocese straight down. They said they didn't want to do with him what happened to the West End. And Groden had a history of that. Because it wasn't just us, it was the North End too. The North End was supposed to do sergeant swaps with Monsignor Grodin. They refused to. They totally refused to do the project with him. They felt it was better to lose the project than to do the project with him, because they knew in the end it wouldn't work out right, because he had done one in the North End, and they ended up totally disenchanted with him. I guess right here it says, he finished this long letter, he sent this long letter saying that, you know, so-and-so, you know, I am such a good guy, I've done great housing here and there, and he finished it by saying, I had looked forward to doing for East Boston what we have been able to do for so many communities. I regret that we will not be doing it. Now that was all great, and you know, and he signed it, Reverend Michael Groden, General Director. The East Boston Chamber of Commerce, okay, sent him back a letter. Now these came out of the East Boston Times, I think, or the whatever it was. The Chamber of Commerce says, Dear Editor, right, it was some relief and yet some disappointment to read your letter in last week's edition that said that Father Groden, you know, was getting out, and says, judging by the tone of your letter, you are feeling disappointed, meeting Groden. You are feeling disappointed and defensive. Your disappointment is understandable, blah, blah, blah. He was very nice till he got to the last paragraph. In the last paragraph it goes, in your closing, you stated that you had looked forward to doing for East Boston what the Archdiocese had been able to do for so many other communities. You expressed your regret that you would not be doing it. Please understand East Boston's relief that you will be not doing it either. Sincerely, East Boston's Chamber of Commerce. And I guess basically that tells you more than I could ever say. I mean, I know I've been a critic of his for 8-9 years. Unfortunately, it didn't work out well for us with him. It didn't work out well with a lot of communities for him, but we lost the most because we had originally lost our community, and now he's in a second shot, he has taken it away again. Father Groden is probably as bad as Jerome Rappaport. The only difference between Jerome Rappaport and Father Groden is a Roman collar. Like I said, I don't know if he is a good priest or a bad priest, but I know he's a lousy developer. And now that he's out of there, please don't bring him back. Don't bring him back. Don't mess up any more communities. Bring somebody that has a little bit of compassion and understanding. Somebody that, if things go wrong, will say, instead of getting vindictive and try to hurt you, will say, can't we reason this out? Or you know, he's a priest. He should be saying, turn the other cheek. He should be turning the other cheek. We're supposed to be the bad guys. See, we're supposed to be the guys that are taking advantage of people. He's supposed to say, you know, well, you know, they don't know God. You know, like, Father help them. They don't know what they're doing, you know. Instead, he's the one that's doing all the vindictive stuff, okay? And on a priest, it's not that great. I guess, like I said before in that letter to the Globe, and I'll finish it up. I thought I was dealing with Bing Crosby and going my way. Instead, I got Cardinal Richelieu. And see you at the next West End Video Newsletter.